Hey everybody, I'm Chris Cuomo. Welcome to NewsNation. Utah prosecutors released their indictment today. They say they now know who killed Charlie Kirk and why. Tyler Robinson, 22, is the man that prosecutors say they have, which they do, and they say they can prove he murdered Charlie Kirk. He appeared in court today facing 7 counts, including aggravated murder, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. Now, the question is, what is the proof? Prosecutors say they can show that leading to the shooting, Robinson told his family that Charlie Kirk was spreading hate. After the shooting, prosecutors say his parents told them they confronted their son after recognizing him in the photos that the FBI put out. Prosecutors also say that the parents told them he confessed to the killing. Next, prosecutors say his roommate told them the defendant admitted he killed Kirk to them. Prosecutors say they can prove there was a long text exchange between Robinson and his roommate where Robinson admits why he killed Charlie Kirk. The answer? Here.
On September 10th, 2025, the roommate received a text message from Robinson which said, "Drop what you're doing. Look under my keyboard." The roommate looked under the keyboard and found a note that stated, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it." The following text exchange then took place. Robinson, "I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you." Roommate, "Why?" Robinson, "Why did I do it?" Roommate, "Yeah." Robinson, "I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I am able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence." Roommate, "How long have you been planning this?" Robinson, "A bit over a week, I believe. Remember how I was engraving bullets? The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notice bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke all right. Since Trump got into office, my dad has been pretty diehard MAGA." Robinson, "I'm going to turn myself in willingly. One of my neighbors here is a deputy for the sheriff."
So stupid, so pointless. You notice I'm couching everything as an allegation because that's all an indictment is, but also because we are in an age of trust nothing, verify everything. So if the defendant makes a deal to avoid the death penalty, which prosecutors say they will pursue, the prosecutors better release all the actual screenshots of the texts, and we better hear from the parents, and we better hear from the roommate. Now, if there's a trial, we'll learn in due course. But given the state of the country, an argument can be made that to serve the public interest, we should learn more sooner than usual, especially if there were any other groups involved in influencing the defendant. Now, let's talk about the shape of this case and where it leads us. Retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Gagliano and NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber. On the investigative side, Jimmy, the defendant did a lot of the work for investigators here, as did the parents by coming forward and saying what they knew. But what do you take away from the indictment?
Well, I'll tell you what, Chris. I mean, you can convict somebody on circumstantial evidence, and I've seen people go to jail for the rest of their natural lives that had far less evidence than's already been released. Now, I think the prosecution's got to be careful. Now, this is a state prosecution right now. Aggravated murder is the top charge on this. And, Chris, the released evidence, yes, it's good for all of us to know this. Yes, as you pointed out, with the country so divided and with nobody believing anything, I think it was critically important to do so. However, and this will get into Jesse's realm, are you tainting potential jury pools? Are you putting too much information out? Because, Chris, from my perspective, the amount of evidence that's been released, they have everything. They have DNA evidence. They'll have latent fingerprint evidence. And they have the words of the own shooter on Discord saying that he did it. Chris, this is going to be a tough case for the defense to put up a decent defense.
Jesse, no terrorism charges. Interesting, today we learned Luigi Mangione, the punk who shot the healthcare CEO, got 2 of the charges dropped because the judge said that the indictment that was handed down by the grand jury was not based on sufficient evidence. Unusual, but within the discretion of the judge. Do you think there should have been terror charges here, or is it too dicey?
Well, look, we also have to understand where they're going to be going with this, but we also have to remember what the black letter law is. Why did it happen to Mangione? I can make the argument, sure, it looks like terrorism, right? He allegedly killed a United Healthcare executive. Everybody was freaking out. The prosecution said, oh, he was trying to influence the healthcare industry. He was trying to intimidate United Healthcare workers. The judge didn't buy it. They said that is not trying to intimidate or coerce a civilian population. And when we go to this case, you ask me, if the case was, did he do it, right? Did he do it? If all of this evidence comes in, I am shocked at looking at this text message conversation. It's so unambiguous, but it's not the question if did he did it. It's whether or not he's guilty of aggravated murder. And they're very specific about what that means. It's not just a murder that's heinous. It's a murder that's done when it poses a grave risk of danger to others. Is firing a bullet into a crowd, is that a grave risk of danger? They talked a lot today about how they're trying to enhance this. They're saying children were present. They're saying this was a killing done for because of political expression. I can make the argument if I'm the prosecutor, but there's so much there for the defense to work with to say it doesn't meet those elements like we saw in Mangione. We're in the beginning stages of this. My gosh, do they have a lot of evidence to show that he ultimately, allegedly did do it, including the DNA on the rifle, on the trigger? But a question of whether or not he's going to be found guilty of those specific charges based on the law. Let's see what defense attorneys do.
Now, Gags, I can't tell you how many people are refusing to believe everything that's in the indictment. They're making it up. They're making it up. This is a MAGA family, and they raised this kid, and now all of a sudden he's a lefty, and where'd this roommate come from? Boy, does this fit perfectly. And where are the text messages? People are so freaked out and angry and distrusting. Do you think that may warrant more disclosure than usual?
Chris, I think you laid it out perfectly right there. That's why it's being done, where prosecutors and investigators right now are kind of cringing, going, okay, enough. You don't want to put the whole case out there when you're just charging somebody in a charging document. Now, Chris, having said that, and when you talk about uniting the country, I could very well see from the perspective, you just asked me to put my civilian hat on, from this perspective, that I could see the Kirk family, Erica Kirk, coming forward. I could see other people making the same movement because the parents turned this kid in to try to see if they could get the death penalty taken off the table. Look, for the death penalty, you got to convince 2 juries. That's 24 people, 12 on the conviction, 12 for death. And I think in an instance like this, you may see some pushback from people, even like me in law enforcement, that say, hey, maybe this case, we need to take a different look at it.
Hey, Jesse, you think the family brought him forward? Obviously, this is something that's knowable if they are asked the question. But do you think they brought him forward because they wanted to avoid the death penalty? And do you think that in this climate, especially the state of Utah, and there may be federal charges also, that the death penalty will come off the table in this situation?
Well, look what happened with Koberger, right? The death penalty was on the table. When he realized he couldn't beat it, he couldn't get the evidence thrown out. It was a bargaining chip. He ultimately pled guilty and avoided a trial and got life in prison. I can't say, based on everything I've seen right now, that the family decided to cooperate and turn him in because they were thinking that far ahead about the death penalty. It seemed, based on what was said today and the reporting from the last week, he was about to take his own life. And they were panicked, and they were trying to do whatever they could for him to come in and admit to law enforcement what he did and ultimately, turn himself in because they were concerned about his life. And it must have been an incredibly difficult decision for both, by the way, this mother and father. We learned a lot more details about that conversation. They're trying to piece together what this whole network is. And remember, they're now in the spotlight. The whole country is looking at the Robinson family. So it's going to be very difficult for them. We always talk about the victim's family, how they're going to process a trial and the legal process, but we also have to remember their family and how confused and shocking this must be. The roommate, who's now a central figure in this case, Governor Spencer Cox says that roommate was shocked by this. You look at those messages, the roommate is shocked and can't believe what happened here.
He doesn't sound right in the head. Now, you can argue, of course not, he killed somebody. People could just be bad, as you and I both know way too well in different contexts. Murderers don't have to be mentally ill. But this guy's saying he was coming home and that if he can just find the rifle, he left no trace. What does that tell you?
Chris, he was living in La La Land. And again, as we've talked about over the last couple of weeks, these are all young Gen Z kids, that generation, whether it's Luigi Mangione, whether it's the guy that tried to take out President Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, whether it was the shooter at Assumption Parish out in Minneapolis of recent. These are all young, disconnected, disaffected kids. And I'll go back to my point on this. It goes back to assassination culture. You take a grievance, you then add in an intractable ideology to it, and then you apply a patina of moral absolutism, Chris, and that convinced this guy, Charlie Kirk was so evil, I have a right to take his life.
Politically, that's all we're hearing about, especially from the right, a little bit from the left with the Groyper or whatever, this whole this dark, unknown world that should stay unknown, except to law enforcement, that they're going to go after people who say things. They're going to go after these groups. They're going to go after funding. What is your sense of concern about this bent?
Well, Chris, I know the night that this happened when we spoke, I made the point, again, I'll put my civilian hat on. When something like this happens, a mass shooting, a terrorist attack, in this instance, a political assassination, show me one person that doesn't collectively hold his or her breath and go, please don't be my tribe or team. We all do it. And that's kind of where we've got to break away from that in this instance where, yes, motivations are important because you're trying to prevent the next one. And from a law enforcement and a prosecution perspective, you want to figure out what motivated somebody to do it. And in the instance where you're talking about, were they inspired? Were they directed, like we talk about in terrorist cases? Or in this instance, was he provided any material support? Look, it's going to be tough to convict somebody from an encouragement perspective. Hey, there's some young kid on Discord and he goes, yeah, man, Charlie Kirk should have been killed. That's going to be tough. That's going to be difficult to charge somebody like that. But did somebody direct him? Did somebody encourage him? That is something that I think the FBI is looking into right now, and we could see further charges on something along those lines.
Right, it certainly would be political, if not legal. I'll tell you what I'm worried about, fellas, and I thank you both for your help on this. I'm worried about who's next, because I think we're kidding ourselves if we think we've reached any kind of critical mass. You know, I mean, this friend of mine gave me a great but horrifying line. She said, we have created an ideological Berlin Wall in our society. And, you know, yes, the reference is because that was her experience in Germany and everybody wants to talk about the 1930s. We have created an ideological wall in our society, and I'm very worried about it. And I think we see more of this. I would say, God forbid, but he gave us free will, and man, are we abusing it. Jesse, thank you very much. Gags, as always, appreciate you both very much. To be continued. 4 minutes and 35 seconds. I got to tell you, Kash Patel had a real hearing today, the FBI director, before the Senate. Some of it was noise. Some of it was signal about what matters to you and me. And I want to talk to lawmakers who say I'm wrong. Maybe they're right. Next.
Mr. Patel was so anxious to take credit for finding Mr. Kirk's assassin that he violated one of the basics of effective law enforcement. At critical stages of an investigation, shut up and let the professionals do their job.
Got to tell you, Durbin said some things that were helpful in that hearing. I don't believe that was one of them. But FBI Director Kash Patel had a real question and answer session today with the Senate. And part of it was about, you know, this guy's a tweeter. right? He was a pod bro. Yeah, he worked in the government before, but that's how the Trump administration does things. It uses social media in a way that is unconventional and, frankly, abnormal, and sometimes they get tripped up, and that's what happened here. Now, I don't really care about Patel tweeting, okay? That's a style point for me, all right? But he was also pressed on his handling of the Epstein files, and that is very high interest, and here's the headline. We're not going to get anything more anytime soon. Kash placed the blame on Trump's former labor secretary, Acosta. Remember him? He was the first guy to prosecute Epstein back in the 2000s. He gave him that very, very generous deal. Here is Kash Patel saying, oh, it's not about me. It's about him.
Now, I know that there's a lot of talk about Epstein, and I'm here to testify that the original sin in the Epstein case was the way it was initially brought by Mr. Acosta back in 2006. The original case involved a very limited search warrant or set of search warrants and didn't take as much investigatory material it should have seized. If I were the FBI director then, it wouldn't have happened. Mr. Acosta allowed Epstein to enter in 2008 to a plea and non-prosecution agreement, which then the courts issued mandates and protective orders legally prohibiting anyone from ever seeing that material ever again.
Now, look, I don't believe that legal argument, okay? The idea that judges sealed it, fight over it. And this is the guy who was saying there are lists, we're going to learn as soon as we get in. Acosta doesn't explain all that away, all right? Because the irony is Kash Patel is now saying what we were saying in the media at the time, that this deal doesn't make any sense, let us know what's on the inside of it, okay? And look, Acosta was definitely a problem, but remember, President Trump gave him a job with full knowledge of the deal that he had given Epstein. Yes, Acosta wound up resigning as labor secretary when all the drama came out about Epstein, but he wasn't an issue for them until that. Now, here's the sticky part for the FBI director now. It's what he said next.
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
Look, either there could be this kind of information, but he can't get it because judges sealed it. But that doesn't seem to be what he's saying, and we know Kash Patel would not be slow to make an excuse like that, right? He would put it on the judges. He's not. The problem is Kash Patel won't explain why he said something else before he was the FBI director. And you're going to now speculate about that. What was his motivation when he was a pod bro? Was it just to get clicks, to be provocative, to say things that hurt trust in government? I think you could check every one of those boxes, but now he's in a different situation, okay? People who needed to be prosecuted in the Epstein case, that's what he was selling, okay? Now he says he's changed his mind, but there's this hanging question mark out there that the judges won't let us see. Well, what is there? Is it because now we're all going to want that, right? Now, it's okay to admit that you were wrong. I know it's tough in politics, but we got to change the rule. For example, okay, before I bring in the lawmakers, last night, Mehdi Hasan was right. I actually didn't even remember so much has happened since January 6th that I did call it an insurrection at the time. And you know what happened? As more facts came out, I no longer saw it as an insurrection because it didn't meet the legal definition. You know who agreed with me? The prosecutors, because they didn't try anybody for insurrection. So I changed my opinion. That's okay. Sure, you can beat me up for it on social media, but what good is coming from that dumpster fire? So let's talk about what we now know and what we can do with this information, okay? The gift of NewsNation to you as an audience is that we bring lawmakers from left and right together to be reasonable. No one else does it. Everyone should do it. Florida, Member of Congress, Republican Randy Fine. Washington, Democratic Representative Adam Smith. They're even standing next to each other. You look great. You look great standing together. Thank you both for your patience. Thank you for working with me today. I appreciate it. So, Randy, do you share my frustration that this Epstein thing won't go away because there was a promise made that now people feel isn't being kept, and Kash Patel seems to be putting it on the judges and putting it on Acosta, not himself?
Well, I do share a frustration. I did 81 events in my district over the August recess. 70 of them I took questions, and I didn't get a single question from one of my constituents about the Epstein files. And my events were with hard-right Republicans. They were bipartisan. Even halfway through, I would point out in my events that no one had asked me about the Epstein files, and still no one asked. What my constituents are worried about are crime and the budget deficit, making America safe again, and focusing on international relations. So what frustrates me about this is also, if this was so important, Joe Biden had 4 years to release the files. This newfound discovery of interest, I think the whole thing smacks of naked partisanship, and I'm ready to solve America's problems.
Well, listen, I love where you're coming from, Randy. So does Adam. Adam makes this point all the time when he's on the show. He's always batting my questions aside and saying, why don't we talk about what actually matters? But let's be very clear. It was the Trump administration, it was Trump people who are now in his cabinet who made Epstein relevant, just to be honest. Now, Adam, that said, Democrats have also taken up the mantle.
If I might, first of all, I agree completely with what he just said. Those are the issues we should be focusing on. But let's be 100% clear on why we're focusing on Epstein. It's because of Donald Trump and Kash Patel and the MAGA supporters that they whipped into a frenzy when Biden was president. That is why we are focused on Epstein, because they made all these wild accusations about Biden and everything else. It was going to be revealed. All these names were going to be on a list. It's part of the massive effort at disinformation on so many issues, from immigrants eating dogs and cats in Ohio on down the road. Yeah, I completely agree. This is not what we should be talking about. So the question is, why was Donald Trump and all of his supporters, including Kash Patel, spending so much time talking about it before they ran, and then when they get into office, they got nothing? So they're the ones who stirred up this ridiculous situation. So I think they should be held accountable for it.
I mean, Chris, isn't it possible that they got into office, they saw the files, and they said, this is where we are? I think that's what Kash Patel said today. So there's a belief they could access to the information, and now they did exactly what you just said.
But there was no belief before they got into office. If they hadn't seen the files, they had some very specific accusations based on this massive amount of ignorance that they had. There were all these Democrats involved in a pedophile ring, and they were covering up for all these people. So if they had said, look, we don't know what's in the Epstein files, we want to get in office, we want to find out, then you'd have a point. But that's not what they did. They said they had stuff that they did not have.
Right. So we are where we are. Kash Patel did it.
And seeing what's there.
Well, listen, I would thank them, too, if they hadn't made promises before they even looked. But, Randy, you are right that there are things that matter much more. This is the first time I've seen a tragedy in American society, and I think Charlie Kirk being murdered is a tragedy, where there's almost no motivation for healing. I want to talk to you fellas about this. What do you think we should do now, after the fact? Randy?
Well, I think first... Oh, sorry.
No, well, look, I think we've got to say with one voice that you cannot settle political disputes with guns. We have done that twice in our nation's history. The American Civil War was a civil war between British subjects, and then obviously in the 1860s we had our actual American Civil War. We do not want to end up in that place. And so I have people I have huge disagreements with, but I do not want them to be hurt. And so the people who are trying to justify this, we need to speak with one voice and say it's not okay. And if you're in a position of authority because you work for the government, or you're funded by the government, or you have a government-funded license, you've got to go. And that's what I've been working on the last few days.
Yeah, and I think we have spoken with one voice. I think part of the problem within the media is you'll pull out someone on social media who made a comment, but the number of Democrats, including me, immediately after we learned of the death, who put out statements absolutely condemning it. Democrats have absolutely condemned this, and clearly saying violence has no place in public discourse. Completely what Representative Fine just said. So I think we have have spoken with
If I could disagree, I think the vast majority of elected Democrats have. We've got a couple in Florida who didn't. They're not in Congress. But I think the bigger issue is with sort of the masses. I mean, a meaningful percentage of people who describe themselves as very liberal say assassinations are okay. It's not a majority, but it's also not 1%.
I really disagree.
But it's true.
Because, no, it's not. Because what Republicans have been trying to argue since Charlie Kirk's brutal assassination is that somehow this is a Democrat problem. And that's where we lose what Chris is talking about here. Any sort of bipartisan consensus. You know, we've had the president himself, when he made his announcement, he put it all on the hands of the leftists.
Yeah.
There is, and Chris, you and I have talked about this before, there's folks right and left. We ought to condemn them both. Not just have Republicans condemning the Democrats and then conveniently forgetting about the folks on the right who have either advocated for or committed acts of violence. It should be both, not just one.
These can be consistent. There is bipartisan consensus, but if it's 20% of liberals, that's not the consensus. But 20% is still a large percentage of the people. So both these things can be true. The overwhelming majority of Democrats can speak out against the violence, but there can be also a large number of them that are saying it's okay.
There is also a large number of Republicans who have made it clear. When Nancy Pelosi, when her house was invaded, was attacked, they were making jokes about it. Governor Youngkin, not some random guy on the internet who happens to claim he's a liberal. Governor Youngkin, the day after Paul Pelosi was hit in the head with a hammer, when a guy broke in to try and kill both Nancy and Paul, made a joke about it. So there's plenty on both sides. We should stay in the middle and say this is wrong,
well, I'll tell you,
no matter who's saying it. And the second a Republican says, well, it's wrong because Democrats say it, or a Democrat says it's wrong because Republicans say it, then we lose that consensus that we need to get.
And look, all political violence is wrong. It doesn't matter if it's on the left or on the right.
100%. And I think that the best thing you can do is what you're doing right now. You're standing next to each other. You don't agree about things, but you are disagreeing with decency. And you're talking about doing the work of the American people and that you don't want this to be everything that our government is about. And for that, I appreciate you both. And when the fog clears and we get back to figuring out what to do about tariffs, what to do about what you were just talking about, Randy. I want to see what the Attorney General decides to act on, Ms. Bondi, about going after people who say things she doesn't like. Last time I checked, the government can't be in the speech regulation business. So I look forward to you guys doing the job and us talking about it here. Thank you both, fellas. I appreciate you being on together. Adam, thank you. Randy, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
All right, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Now, when we come back, the UN Commission has concluded Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. We have discussed this before. You have to look at the report, okay? Is this about the truth, or is it about advancing a toxic agenda? Let's discuss based on the facts. An independent panel, I put it in quotes because I think that that is in question, but an independent panel appointed by the United Nations has concluded that Israel has committed genocide against Palestinians in Gaza. Israel, of course, maintains that the war in Gaza is self-defense in accordance with international law. The report says 46% of those killed in Gaza are women and children. 83% overall are civilians, not Hamas combatants. How do they know that? In fact, the report, over its 72 pages, uses the word genocide a lot, like 250 times, but it only mentions tunnels where Hamas hides and fights its war. And remember, in context, that's why Israel says it has to do what it is doing once. So, who are the members of the panel? What is the basis for the findings? Let's discuss. John Spencer, Executive Director at the Urban Warfare Institute, and Cenk Uygur, host, co-founder of the Young Turks, both friends of mine, okay? On opposite sides of this issue, clearly, but I appreciate you both being here and giving the audience something that will be food for thought. Cenk, why do you believe the UN Commission report?
Yeah, the evidence is overwhelming now. So first of all, you have about at a minimum 65,000 deaths. That 83% number comes from a leaked report from the IDF, reported by the Israeli press. To give you a sense of context on whether it's deliberate, Hamas on October 7th had a 67% civilian kill ratio, which is terrible, one of the worst. Israel's is 83%. So that means they've killed about 54,000 civilians in Gaza so far. That is 66 October 7th. That is an unbelievable number. Over 30,000 dead women and children. So the report concluded that the attacks against the Palestinians were in whole or in part. That is what defines a genocide. A Holocaust, on the other hand, would be if they were targeting them in whole, trying to wipe out the whole race. Genocide is targeting in whole or in part. And what they concluded was that their targeting of Palestinian civilians and children was, quote, expansive and deliberate. And so with an 83% civilian kill ratio, one of the worst in our lifetime, it's obviously intentional. And now they're, slaughtering the people of Gaza City, 69 dead this morning, 22 kids. It's like the worst mass shooting we've had at a school, except it happens every single day. So I think what they're trying to do is, can we grab Gaza here, make it so uninhabitable that we take Gaza over? And they've declared that they are going to form Greater Israel and that Palestine will never exist. So it just really couldn't be any clearer.
So, John, there's a lot there, but there are two aspects of this to me. It's the numbers, it's the tactics, and then it's who says based on this independent panel. So let's just do one at a time. Cenk puts a lot of numbers out there. Why don't the numbers tell the story for you, John?
I mean, I think what Cenk just said and what the commission said is impressive. It's an impressive collection of Hamas and distorted information, like the 83% number, which is a Guardian, which if that's your source of information, report that debunks itself in the article, saying that the IDF database lists this number of Hamas combatants, named individuals, and then that number is 8,000. So they subtract the 8,000 from the reported 60,000 dead and say that they've only killed, and 83% are civilians. Totally disregarding what the article says, that this doesn't account for all the unnamed individuals in Hamas. Back to the commission report about the genocide claims, since they can't, this is almost an assault, an impressive assault on critical thinking, irrelevant if you knew nothing about the war. If a number says 68,000 have died, okay, how many were involved in the war? Because the entire report doesn't list Hamas as a combatant. What was the size of Hamas? What does Hamas tactics, like you said, using human shields? How many individuals has Hamas killed? None of that is listed in this report. And it actually says, since it can't prove genocidal intent, because they do things like remember Amalek that the prime minister said once, which is posted on the Holocaust Memorial in The Hague, but somehow that means genocidal intent. Although in order to do that, you have to have specific intent, not gross negligence. But then they use the numbers. But I'm kind of a critical thinker. So if you have a accusation and here's your number, what about anything else that would refute that? Like right now, 2.2 million tons of food, 14 million liters of water that are coming from Israel being pumped into Gaza today, 2 million vaccinations, how many notifications, all of the information that would at least be a part of the context of, is Israel targeting civilians and trying to eliminate the people of Palestine? And I find it almost laughable that this report says one of the genocidal acts Israel is doing is killing Palestinians. It doesn't say Palestinian civilians, because I can guarantee you, having been there, that Israel is absolutely trying to kill Hamas, who also are Palestinians, but they're trying to kill the enemy, that they're in this war. And the report, Chris, I think the most damning part of this report is it states that while October 7th was probably war crimes, it is not an existential threat to Israel, and it didn't warrant a large-scale combat operation in response. That's crazy.
So, Cenk, Obviously, you can respond, but I want you to address one other thing. You know, if you had been asked to do this report, you would be open and transparent and say, look, I have strong feelings about what Israel is doing. What I'm worried about here is that these people who are supposed to be independent don't seem that independent. They list 3 main members. They don't mention who else was involved, which is a little bit of an odd omission. And the people that they do mention are each very controversial. The woman on there, Pillay, claimed Israel was deliberately targeting children playing. In the last report she was a part of. Kothari said that social media is controlled by the Jewish lobby. And Sidoti said that the Israeli army is the most criminal army in the world. I mean, that's who does the report?
Yeah, but Chris, you're talking about their conclusions 2 years into this war. So let's break it down one by one. First of all, the report settled something about Hamas. It was not biased. So, for example, recently, not in the beginning, but recently, there were some credible reports that there might not have been sexual assault on October 7th. And the report says that's not true. There definitely was sexual assault that Hamas committed on October 7th. So they're holding them accountable as well. And of course they should. It's a horrific crime what happened on October 7th. And all I'm trying to do is get people to understand a sense of scale here. The 36 kids killed on October 7th is heartbreaking. Over 20,000 Palestinian kids. So if, you know, I know what the Israeli side always does. They say, okay, well, we're going to try to get you to believe that, well, maybe the numbers are off by a little bit. So what if they were off by a little bit and only 18,000 kids were killed? Now imagine if 18,000 Israeli kids were killed by Hamas. What wouldn't we do to them? I mean, we've already destroyed all of Gaza. We, meaning America financing it and Israel executing it. Guys, this is not around the edges. They destroyed almost every hospital, religious building, and educational building. They destroyed them when they were empty. They're paying mercenaries $1,500 to destroy every house. I've never seen such a deliberate act of genocide in my life. It is methodical. It's blood-curdling how methodical this process is. They're wiping out Gaza. And guys, you can go and say, oh, people are biased. But no one's buying it anymore. The whole world has seen what's happened in Gaza, and Gaza is absolutely leveled. The former head of the IDF said we've had 200,000 casualties, and we never listened to the lawyers. He just said that yesterday.
Two things can be true, right? Look, I wish I could go there tomorrow. And they'll say, oh, you can go. Not with the IDF. I want to go there. Oh, they're going to take you. Come on. We went to Iraq, we went to Afghanistan, go to Pakistan. We know the risks. I would love to be there and report on it myself, and I think it's greatly needed. But two things can be true. I do think these people were biased, and what we're all seeing is horrible. But again, Cenk, I'll just leave it with this, and we'll see what the reactions are to the report, and we'll reconvene, and I thank you both for being with me today. If it's a genocide, why do they tell people to leave? Why do they give aid at all? And why do they have so many of these same people living with them as Israeli citizens? That's the part that doesn't work for me, but I know there are counter-arguments. Let's see who makes them and how. We'll reconvene. Cenk, I always appreciate you being here. John Spencer, I appreciate you being here. And I hate that I have to say this, but I must. I care about these guys. I like these guys. If we disagree, that's fine. They matter to me. And they have the right to say what they want to say, even if they disagree, even if you hate what they say. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. Bolo, be on the lookout. Here's something I think we should all care about. There's this bunch of dirtbags that is growing all the time that is scamming our seniors. Billions of dollars. And we can't seem to get our hands on it. Dusty's mom was one of them. And now we're learning they're getting more sophisticated, and guess what's behind it? AI. Phantom hacker scams. What is it? What do you do about it? Next. Police call it a BOLO. It's an acronym. Be on the lookout. A few weeks ago, Dusty, my EP, was on with you and me describing a scam that her mother fell victim to. Seniors all over the country are getting hit, just like Dusty's mom. Tens of billions of dollars in this country alone. Some of them are losing their life savings. We promised to stay on it. We're working with guys who do this for a living, trying to target this, but it's not easy. And Dusty is back with the development. What do you know?
Okay, so the real quick development is that the Attorney General put out a big consumer alert warning New Yorkers that this is getting bigger, more sophisticated, more seniors being scammed, and they've now given it a name, which is, quote, phantom hacker, end quote. And there are 3 phases to this, and I'm going to let the guys, the experts, take over. But I'm just getting more and more stories, and it seems to be growing, not getting better. So the guys can take over.
So Art Kulik and Ashton Bingham join us now. They're from Trilogy Media, and they try to unmask these guys. Fellas, I don't care what they call it, and it's not enough to put out an alert because nobody's going to know about it and people getting scammed all the time. So, Art, what is this about?
They're going to bring that over situation that something going to happen to the money, and we need to move that money to like secure place, and money is gone. So it's a lot of steps, but pretty much people believing that they're talking to real Bank of America, Wells Fargo, or other banking institutions. But at the end of the day, if somebody call you and gonna say, I am manager of Bank of America, and we have hackers that access to your account and your money not secure, like you have to hang up immediately and do your own research and go on an official website and call those people.
Ashton, now the problem is people aren't sophisticated enough to do that, especially in the senior population. I'm not calling seniors, they're the greatest generation, but this is not their world. AI, you say, is making it worse. So who has to fix this? The banks?
Everybody, seemingly. It's getting a lot worse. It's not going anywhere. AI is definitely here to stay, and there's a lot of great uses for it. But just as much as teachers and students and stuff can use it to learn, scammers can use it to impersonate and make their ruse all that more believable, especially to elderly people who may not even fully grasp the power of AI and what things can be done. It's literally like giving scammers like a megaphone. It just makes them louder. It makes them more convincing. And awareness is really the only way to fight this back. The best way to fight a scam is to stop it from happening in the first place. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get more and more convincing. And people need to make their loved ones aware and establish, secret passwords amongst their families and proof of life protocols and second ways of communicating with each other so you can verify if someone's calling you pretending to be Bank of America or calling you pretending to be your grandson in danger. I mean, it runs the whole gamut, and it's only going to get worse.
Ashton, Art, thank you so much. Trilogy Media is doing the job, and we will stay on it. We'll be right back. Leland Vittert picks up our coverage right now.